Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the football club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
A mixed end to the festive period for United as a defeat at Wigan is followed up by some New Year joy at home to Port Vale. We look back on a disappointing end to 2023 and an encouraging start to 2024 before previewing this weekend's huge clash at fellow strugglers Exeter City.
With a pass so true to Balderstone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run.
Yes, Mike, Happy New Year. It's the first time I think I've seen you since... And I can actually see you this time, can't you?
Yeah.
It's our new system we're using where we you're not going to get to see us, unfortunately, because you really don't want to see Mike's room that he's recording in, his little dungeon, wherever it is. But
yeah, I mean, you could have put some clothes on for this, to be honest, but hey ho.
It's I've got the heating on full blast. What can you say? Happy New Year, Mike. Happy New Year to all our listeners as well. Glad to have you all with us for 2024. Hopefully an exciting 2024 for Carlisle United. And It's been a busy day today, Mike, hasn't it? Nice of the club to get a few signings sorted before we record. This is the new era for you, isn't it? I think
it really is a new era under the Piatics, isn't it? Yeah.
Quite incredible. So we'll be discussing them shortly. Also, we'll be looking back on the last two of the festive fixtures, differing fortunes in those two games, but certainly an encouraging signs on New Year's Day against Port Vale. And then obviously we'll be looking ahead to the Exeter City game, and we've got a chat with an Exeter City fan coming as part of that as well. Just a reminder before we start, as usual, the pod has been sponsored by the Carlisle United Supporters Club London Branch this season. It's the third season in a row they've done that. They do some fantastic stuff for the club, do the London Branch in terms of fundraising for equipment for like the physio team and stuff like that. They also do a lot of stuff for fans going to away games, exiles, in terms of arranging travel and tickets for games, and obviously sorting out designated pubs and things like that. You can join them wherever you live in the world. If you live in Timbuktu, you can join them. If you live in Johannesburg, you can join them. If you live in, I'm trying to think, anywhere else you can think of, Mike, in the world. Crew. He wants to join Crew. If you mention Crew in football, it just reminds me of that famous flag, doesn't it? What is it?
Oh yeah,
born in Crew,
born
living
in Crew,
dying.
Yeah, so depressing.
Crew. It's like, yeah, not the cheeriest, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, so if you want to find out more about joining the London Branch, just go to their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. Let's get into the news then, Mike. Do you want to do the transfers first, or do you want to do the discussion about the incidents at the end of the Port Vale game? I think should we do the good news first, and then maybe go on to the Port Vale?
Well, we'll get the bad stuff out of the way, I think.
All right, okay. Well, unfortunately, slightly overshadowing the impressive win over Port Vale on New Year's Day, another incident involving a few of the minority of that are in the Warwick Road end this season and last season as well. Unfortunately, they were there as well. This is pretty unsavoury, wasn't it, Mike? I think it's fair to say. I mean, look,
yeah.
When you go to games, you give people stick, you shout stuff at them. It's a joke. It's a bit of fun, sometimes just trying to put them off. What was said to Connor Ripley, I mean, part of me is like whether we repeat it or not, but let's repeat it anyway. Basically, someone told him to go kill himself, essentially, and they did it quite repetitively by all accounts. For me, that very much is stepping over a line in terms of behaviour at games. I don't know what you think about it, Mike, but there's no need for it at all. It's pretty shocking. Apparently, Ripley confronted the fan, and in fact, because there was a few people I saw on the message board doubting the veracity of this and saying, I think there's a little bit too often some of our fans are determined to defend the behaviour of some of our other fans, and it shouldn't be defended. It just shouldn't. And one fan did actually tweet during the game to say it had happened, didn't they? They basically said this is what's happened at the game, and blah blah blah. And so it did happen. The police have looked into it. A 13-year-old boy, I'm not sure if he's come forward or has been identified, but he's basically been spoken to by the police. I don't think there's anything they could really charge him on, but it looks like the club have banned him, at least for the time being. this is an ongoing issue in the Warwick Road End, and I feel bad for lads like Sonny who've done some fantastic stuff, Sonny Kirkwood in the Warwick Road End in terms of improving the atmosphere and the work they did on the painting the crush barriers and stuff like that. This is a real letdown for them, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, I've seen a few people say, because we hear it all the time, it's only a minority, blah, 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 blah. And I've heard people say, oh, no, but they don't represent Carlisle fans. But at the same time, we keep having these ridiculous issues. And if this was another club that had loads of these issues, we would be saying, well, their fans are all knobheads, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? And it's our club, it's our fans. And there's been too many kind of one-off incidents now for them to be one-off incidents at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've seen a few people say, "Oh no, the good lads in the worker, they need to rat them out. They need to rat these people out." It's easier said than done when you're a 15, 16-year-old to rat out someone else who's done that. For me, I think the club needs to look a little bit at the security in there. I think they needs to be looking at potentially getting some stewards in to basically be spotters. You see them sometimes at the bigger games. I mean, there was Martin Howard who's listening to the pod. He was sending me something on WhatsApp. He was showing me, I think it was an England game or something like that. It looked like it was at the Parc de France, maybe in France or somewhere like that. And there's a guy whose literal job is there to stand and just watch the crowd and watch for the troublemakers and point them out and get them out if it happens. It's come to the point where you might just need that. And it's not nice, but that's the harsh reality of it now. It's getting a bit silly how many times this is happening.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the response stewards kind of stay away from there because I can see the other side of it is that they don't want to kind of
antagonize.
Standoffish. I do see that, but there's been that many issues now. They need to just be there basically, and as soon as someone's acting up, just chuck them out. Simple as.
Absolutely, something needs to be sorted at some point with that. I think it's fair to say. So there are questions. It has been mentioned before the potential for stand to be closed for a game, which wouldn't be great if it did happen, but it's a possible option that's looking like it's going to happen. But if it carries on, because things were thrown at the keeper again at this game, and it's just got to stop really behaving like that. So we'll leave that one there, and we'll move on to the good news then, Mike. And that was the free's a magic number today, wasn't it? The free signings confirmed. A little bit cheeky, the third one, though, for the club to announce. So three were announced. The third one we'll do first. It was Luke Armstrong. So Luke Armstrong's signing was officially confirmed as having gone through. Simo was saying there was a couple of issues with the paperwork in terms of how agents' fees were registered or something that the EFL or the FA had changed their mind, something that was ridiculous like that. But it was confirmed, a 3.5-year deal, which is might be one of the longest deals we've given, actually, you think, for a long time.
I think so.
You thought at first maybe Mark Ellis, but it was a 2.5-year deal that Mark Ellis got when he signed for us, wasn't it?
I think Jaden Harris, 3 years, is probably the longest in the past 10 years or so.
Yeah, and I can't imagine Harris was on a big wage either. That's basically a project one, isn't it? And sadly, a project that probably looks like it's not going to work out in the end. But yeah, no announcement of the fee, but we understand it's a club record fee, and get him tied down for 3.5 years. It shows the intention of the club owners now, doesn't it? To keep assets like that signed to the club for as long as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as we sort of develop as a club, I think he'll always have a role to play. I think, right now he's going to be our star striker. But as we look to hopefully, push on towards the championship, there's always a role for a big striker in your squad, be it bit part or be it whatever. So yeah, it's good to have him tied down, and I think he'll always have his uses.
Absolutely. Let's go on to the other two signings then. First up, one that was rumoured quite heavily over the last few days and finally confirmed. Harrison Neal is joined from Sheffield United on a 2.5-year deal. No idea if there's a fee involved with this. We suspect probably not. It might be one of those ones where it's like a 50% sell on, which is similar to what we did with Edmondson, wasn't it, basically?
Yeah.
Really interesting signing, this one. It's the kind of signing we'd be screaming out for, a replacement for Callum Guy. And he's previously had loan spells at Kettering, Southend United, Barrow, most impressively, and Stevenage's season. Stevenage's season, he didn't play many games, but I think it's just been a bit unlucky there that Stevenage's midfield has done so well. He's just not being able to get a chance there. And I think all their fans, if you look at the comments when it was announced that he was going back to Sheffield United, all really positive about him, weren't they? Saying, "Oh, really unlucky. All the best to the lad." And the guys from the Stevenage FC podcast, who we obviously have on to talk to each season when we play them, they were raving about him, saying like, really, really good player. When he did play, he's just unlucky that they're doing so well. He just didn't get a chance. And you retweeted something, didn't you? Something quite interesting about this.
Yeah, there was. I thought initially when he was signed that this was indicative of our new kind of stats-based recruitment policy. And I hadn't seen any stats, but from what I've seen of Neil, I thought that that's what it'd be. Because he's a player that wins a lot of tackles, wins the ball a lot. And yeah, this kind of stats software, if you pit him up against Callum Guy, Neil won more aerial duels, more ground duels, more tackles, better dribbler than Guy last season. And, Guy was brilliant last season. So, and obviously Neil was playing in a terrible, abysmal Barrow team. So to do that, playing for them, is only a good thing. And it's good because, everyone knows how much we miss Callum Guy while it's been out. So it's good to get that replacement in early in the window.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting someone in who can do that role. And you would not be amazed if he started against Exeter at the weekend, would you really, in terms of filling that role? And the positive there as well is hopefully it's going to give Moxon a chance to push forward again and actually do a bit more further up the pitch, because he's had to do so much defensive work over the last couple of months that you're not really seeing the best of a player of his quality, are you? So with any luck, that'll really free him up a bit. The other signing is a little bit of a surprise one. Sean Green has joined on, I presume it's Green, I'm just guessing the pronunciation. I probably should have checked it before. He's joined on loan from Crystal Palace until the end of the season. Ex-Bohemians player. He's featured at under 19 and under 21 level for the Republic of Ireland. He's a regular for Palace's under 21 side in Premier League 2. Seems like a player with a bit of potential. A bit of surprise that we signed a centre-back. But then I suppose a couple of years ago when we signed Dinel Simier, it was similar, wasn't it? Where we were a bit like, do we need a centre-back? And actually, if it's a player who can improve what you've got, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
I think it's maybe indicative that, because Simo has done a lot of chop and change in recent weeks with the formation and this and that. And, obviously we're going to touch on the Port Vale game soon, but I think it's Simo acknowledging, all right, 3 at the back is what works. It's what worked last season. I need to stop chopping and changing, and we need to have a fixed system and we need to work with it. And I would guess that Green would be a part of that. But for me as well, bringing him in earlier in the window indicates that, it's not a panic signing. It's someone that they've obviously done the homework on. And to me, it maybe indicates why Simo had so much patience and persistence with Plange, in that, if he was wanting to get Green in January, he didn't want to piss off Crystal Palace, if you like.
No, I think you're absolutely right there. There's an indication of, we want to keep a good relationship going there. And it's the third window in a row that we've signed a player on loan from Palace. When you look at it, Gordon, Plange, and then Green, obviously. And I think there's an element of that. And obviously, there's clearly a good relationship there, because I think their academy manager is Sean Derry, isn't he? Or he's involved there at the very least. Obviously, Derry and Abbott are very big pals, aren't they? And, you want to keep him happy, and you potentially... if Green has a really good loan spell, then next season, when we're hopefully going to be pushing up the right end of the table, if we stay up, obviously, or if we're in League 2 pushing the right end of the table, we'll be able to get a better quality of loan player from them as well, maybe. And Palace produce some really good youngsters, don't they? So it's not a bad club to have a good relationship with in that sense. So interesting to see how Sean fits into the team. I think Mellish's place is pretty safe in the back three, which I'm presuming we're going to stick with for a bit now. Lavelle, you'd think, probably as well. So maybe competing with Barkley for that other centre-back role at the moment, possibly, might be the way it's going for him.
I mean, Barkley, legend for that goal against Bradford, but he hasn't been that good this season for me. I think it's definitely a position that has needed strengthening.
No, I think you're right there. I think it is an area we've needed maybe a little bit of extra quality, but he did have a fairly decent game against Port Vale, which we'll talk about shortly, but there you go. One of a little bit of transfer news. Absolutely no surprise to anyone. Luke Plange has gone back to Crystal Palace at the end of his loan spell. Was it 26 goals? Sorry, 26 goals? No, I wish. 26 games. Calm yourself down, Lee. 26 games, 2 goals. It's pretty damning, isn't it, really, for a forward player that cost £1 million a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
with the greatest respect, he's on a one-way ticket to Horsham, isn't he, really? And the way he's playing at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt his technical ability, and he can carry the ball really well when he wants to, but it's the work rate that's the issue. And unless he sorts that out, he's not going to have a career in the Football League.
In its consistency in that sense, because actually there was a couple of games where you saw that work rate and you saw him really prepared to fight and try and win the ball. But when things weren't going well, he was not up for the scrap at all. And you cannot afford to have players who are like that. You just can't at this level. You need players who are prepared to put the fight in when you're at the bottom as well, especially. And the difference when you look at the way...
Well, I was just going to say, there are some players who don't put the effort in, but they'll just score goals. Jermaine Beckford, for example, he wasn't a grafter, but he'd score goals. But Plange didn't have the goals to let him do that, and let a team carry him.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. The difference when Ryan Edmondson comes on, Edmondson will get criticised for drifting out wide a lot, that kind of thing. But actually, when you look at the effort he puts in, it makes a big difference to the team sometimes. So there you go. Right, I think we've done enough of the news section. Nothing else to pick up in the news, I don't think. I think that's where we're at the moment. No new signings been made while we're on the air, I don't think.
I think they're waiting until after we've recorded for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Right, let's move on to it then. Reviewing the two Christmas games. First up, Wigan Athletic 2, Carl United 0. Interesting one, this one, Mike. Obviously, you were able to attend this because you were working, weren't you? I think you managed to watch it back.
Well, it's funny, actually, because my depot is obviously 9 miles away from Wigan's ground, and I thought, if I finish handy, I can maybe make it to the game, and I've never been so glad to be caught in traffic and not be able to make the game, because, it just wasn't very good, was it?
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Looking back and reflecting on it, first half wasn't great. We weren't outclassed in the same way we were outclassed against them in the game at Brunton Park, but we did struggle a bit to get a grip on it, and I don't think the players quite knew what the formation was, which we'll talk about in a minute. Second half, actually, when you look at it, we had a lot of chances, and we could have easily got back into the game. And I know some people argue, Wigan took their foot off the gas. They did, but they found it very difficult to get their foot back on it. That's the thing, because we were constantly trying to push forward. Yeah, the quality was lacking, absolutely no doubt in that, but I think on another day with a little bit of luck, one of those goes in and suddenly the game's completely changed. That's the difference you see. Whereas, it just didn't quite work out for us in this game. In terms of the team news, when that came out before the game, Taylor Charters dropped to the bench. I don't think we were massively surprised by this one because he's coming back from a long-term injury, and I think Simo's very keen to be dictated by what the medical team tell him on this kind of thing now, isn't he? In terms of preserving players for the excuse me, bloody hell, for the long term. I've had a bit of a cold over Christmas, I think it's fair to say. Preserving them for the long term. So not massive surprise there. Ben Barkley came in for him. The big shock was Luke Plange being completely dropped, wasn't it?
Yeah, not even on the bench, was he? And people, Radio Cumbria seemed to think, because Simo had some comments following the Fleetwood game about the subs and that they didn't do a lot. And Radio Cumbria seemed to think that those comments were maybe aimed at Plange more than some others.
Well, there was only 2 subs that came on, wasn't there? I mean, you can't include Barkley because he came on in the with like 30 seconds to go. Whereas it was Gibson and Plange that came on, and I think Gibson did a bit better than Plange. Yeah, Gibson didn't come on in this game, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, it was a bit of a talking point beforehand, a bit of a positive talking point for a lot of fans, if I'm being brutally honest. I spoke to at the pub before the game. But yeah, I really struggled to work out what formation we were playing at the start. I heard a few people suggest we were playing wing-backs, and we weren't. We were definitely not meant to be playing wing-backs because in the warm-up, it was a back four that was practicing the heading. Emmanuel was nowhere to be seen when it was doing heading practice. It was Barkley, Lavelle, Mellish, and Armour. They were doing the heading practice. Once the game started, I was like, is it a 4-4-2? Probably. It seemed to be maybe with Edmondson and Maguire up front, Robinson on the left, Emmanuel on the right, and then McCalmont and Moxon in the middle. And then I was like, maybe it's a 4-3-3 with Emmanuel a bit further forward. Emmanuel didn't seem to know where he was meant to be playing. That was the problem. He was getting caught out a lot, and it really showed in the early stages. We were like, there was one point where he was playing pretty much on the left wing for a good minute or so. Like, and this wasn't like after a corner or anything like that. It was just literally just turned up there. It was bizarre. We couldn't work it out. The opening goal for Wigan, there's no argument what the penalty is there.
No, I mean, it's funny. I was listening to it on Radio Cumbria, and you could just hear Chris Lumsden on the co-commentary just saying, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it," and then he slides in. Absolutely ridiculous penalty to give away, and there can be absolutely no complaints.
The thing that frustrates me about it is he's left a bit exposed out there. He gets a bit caught out. Fair enough. When the lad gets past him, he has about a 2 or 3 second window where he can put a tackle in, give away a foul outside the box, and you say, yeah, it's a stupid tackle, but fair enough, he had to do something there. And I was saying, like, okay, if you're going to do it, I was almost saying the opposite to Lummy. I was like, if you're going to do it now, do it now, do it now. Like, no, don't do it now. And literally, as soon as you say that, bang, he slid it. At the exact point you don't want him to do it. At that point, you're like, just leave him. Just let him go and hope for the best. But as it was, he brings him down. McGuinness steps up, and he was very close, Gabe Breeze, to saving this, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. And I think that would have been a massive confidence boost for him, but sadly, it wasn't to be. But, I mean, obviously, we're going to touch on Port Vale as well, but Breeze hasn't really done a lot wrong since he's come into the team.
No.
And I think, to be honest, I think the defence might be defending that little bit harder, knowing that there's a young lad in goal, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing, to be honest.
Yeah. We will talk about that at the end of the Port Vale bit, actually. It's a really good talking point, that, to be fair. Second goal for Wigan came about 20 minutes later on the 36-minute mark. Liam Morrison, the lad on loan from Bayern Munchen. Just slacked defending on a corner, isn't it, really? A decent ball into the near post where the lad loses his marker and flicks it on, and then I think Jack's just got to be a little bit tighter, Jack Armour, on Morrison, doesn't he? I think he lets him get in front of him and just poke the ball into the back of the net. And what I would say is, although Breeze hasn't done anything wrong on it, it is one of those ones you look at it and you think, if Thomas Holy's in net, he probably claims that because he's so big, he'll come and claim that the ball going across.
Yeah,
that's not Breeze's fault. He just isn't the size of Holy. Barely any keepers are. So that's the only one area where you do lose a bit when Thomas isn't the team. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, a 2-0. It wasn't great. Wigan did hit the post early on as well. Actually, we forgot to mention that. The best we had really was a curled shot by Emmanuel that went over the bar. There was one slight shout for a penalty in the first half for us. It was very hard to tell down our end of the pitch, but it looked like it might have been a soft one if it was given. They had a couple of shouted penalties that were never penalties, to be fair. Into the second half, a much improved performance there, wasn't it, in terms of creating chances, and 2 or 3 really good opportunities. I think the flicked one from Edmondson, brilliant save from Tickle, to be fair, from a quick reactions to palm that behind. There's another one where Armour, from a low free kick from Robinson, scoops the ball just wide of the post, and then Joe Garner's chance. He's got to bury that, surely, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think maybe 5 years ago he'd bury it 7 days a week, wouldn't he? But it's just sort of showing he's got them limitations now, hasn't he? But I think it's one of them. It's interesting. Dan said this the other day, is that this season, when we score one, you feel like we're going to score another. And I feel like if we'd scored one of those chances, we could well have scored another, but we've just lacked that quality to get that initial goal. But often once we get the initial goal, we get a bit of momentum and it carries us. But we just didn't have that quality, and it's the story of our season, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Should be said, though, should we have had a penalty on that very same free kick?
I don't know. I've not seen the sort of... on Jack Armour.
The assault on Armour. Yes.
Yeah.
That is up there with Jabbo's clothesline to Yeovil, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically.
Straight out of WWE.
It's ridiculous. So before the free kick's even taken, the ref's having a word with him and saying, stop the pulling and shoving. And then as the free kick is taken and comes in, Sean Clare basically grabs Armour by the neck and throws him to the floor, essentially.
Yeah.
Not only is it a penalty, but it's a straight red card because it's violent conduct, essentially.
Yeah.
Nothing given. I wouldn't say Joe Garner got some retribution on him late on, but he did catch him with a possibly slightly stray elbow late on. There was I forgot to mention this, right? So Johnny, who listens to the pod, will know this, and also John McGee, I sat with, and Chris Earl. There was a guy sat near us. We were sort of as you look at the pitch, we were to the right of the goal in block N1, I think it was. Or was it N2? N2, sorry. There was a guy sat near us. Oh my God, his patter throughout the whole game was appalling. Like he kept shouting out, Premier League, and you effed it up, Premier League, and you effed it. I was like, mate, they had 8 seasons in the Premier League. I think they're pretty happy with that. They won the FA Cup as well. Like, come on. Like, he wouldn't stop doing that. But he was basically accusing Claire of faking it and cheating. I mean, he was clearly knocked out. It was pretty obvious to anybody sat around us. And God, some of the stuff he was coming out with, absolutely nonsense. Like, some of the rubbish that comes out some of our fans' mouths sometimes is ridiculous. But
myself included.
But yeah, no, to be fair, I can't even argue with that myself. In terms of coming out of my mouth, I should say there. And there was one more chance where Malish had a good break into the box and played it to Garner, whose shot was deflected behind. And yeah, that was it. Another game where we failed to start well, isn't it? That's been a big problem this season in terms of starting games, and it's something that we really need to improve this month, I think, in terms of, the new players coming. Hopefully that can give them a lift.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if it's because Simo has this philosophy with kickoffs, doesn't he? Where he likes to just boot it out for a throw-in right in the corner. And in League Two, you're putting teams under the cosh and they'll make a mistake in that third of the pitch where they don't want to, and it works. But I feel like in League One, players are just that little bit better technically, and they're able to work their way out of trouble there.
Yeah, I wonder maybe things like that. We maybe need to start looking at doing something a little bit different on the kickoffs. I think you're right there, in terms of that, especially with the goal kicks as well. It's been a little bit different the last few weeks, hasn't it, in terms of that, because Gabe Breeze tends to play them a bit more central than Holy was always target Armour on the left, whereas Breeze is targeting Garner a bit more. I don't know if that's a tactical decision generally by the team. I'm not sure, but
I think Armstrong will massively change that as well, and he's going to help us keep the ball in that third.
Yeah. So I mean, Jordan Gibson not being even used off the bench in this one. It was Garner, Butterworth. I can't remember who else came on. Sorry, I've got it written down here, haven't I? It was Garner, Charters, and Butterworth were the ones who came off the bench, and Gibson wasn't used. Surprised?
To be honest, I wasn't as surprised as other people were. I think a lot of people suddenly got this rumour, didn't they, that, he's off. We've accepted a bid from Stockport and Mansfield and all the rest of it. But Simo said before these sort of Christmassy, New Year-y games that we're going to have to rotate a bit, and there will be some players left out of some games and they will play the next game. And I wasn't looking too much into it, because in my head I was thinking, well, if he starts against Port Vale, that's that. And he did start against Port Vale. So yeah, I didn't really look too much into it, but I know a lot of other people did.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with him, isn't it? Because he's played pretty much every game this season, hasn't he? So maybe it's a case of, like, with this busy Christmas period, and now we've got a busy January coming up as well, you don't want to burn him out, your best player, do you? You want to make sure you keep him at the very least, a decent level of fitness.
Yeah, and I know as well that Port Vale have had a mad injury crisis at fullback, and I think when we played them, I think they had a 16-year-old on one side and a 17-year-old on the other. Yeah. So Simo maybe wanted Gibson fresh for that game. But at the same time, why have him on the bench? Because, I've always thought you've got players on your bench. If someone gets injured in the first minute in that position, they're going to need to come on. So I don't know.
Yeah, and if you're pushing to try and get a goal in the last 10 minutes, surely you'd bring him on to try and have a decent impact there. But obviously he decided not to. Other points on this one, a little bit of the poor discipline in this game. 6 bookings picked up, so that's a £1,000 fine for the club, because if you get 6 bookings for your players in one game, that happens. Of those bookings, some of the bookings were ridiculous, to be fair, and the ref was giving them out for every single tackle. But the one that really wound me up was Sean Maguire's late on. He won a free kick, to be fair. The lad had brought him down. It was a bit of a sloppy one, just inside their half. And then he walked away and he was arguing with the player. And as the kick was taken, he kicked out the player, or he did something to the player. The ref blows up, gives them a free kick and books Maguire. And it's like, you've taken all the impetus out of an attack there. And that really wound me. It's just a stupid thing to do. But You get that from players sometimes, don't you? So it just little things like that do wind me up sometimes. But
I mean, I think we said a few weeks ago we lost. I can't even remember who it was against, and we said that we were disappointed that we didn't get any bookings because it sort of showed a lack of fight.
Yeah.
But this was just stupid bookings. There's showing a bit of fight and there's stupid bookings, and this was definitely the last, wasn't it?
Yeah. There's an area in the middle that you need to hit at there, really, isn't it? So there you go. But yeah, I think overall, actually, I mean, when you look back at the performance, it wasn't that bad a performance. Certainly not as bad as like your Cheltenhams and other one Blackpools and things like that. There was a bit of fight there, especially second half. And what a fantastic away following game. 4,100 in there on a Friday night to watch a team bottom of the league, 1-9. Incredible, isn't it? Really. So hats off to every one of you who travelled down for that game because the weather was not nice. We got drenched walking to the ground beforehand. And I think I just about dried out by the time I got home at about 10:30 or whatever it was. So there you go. Well, let's move on then to the New Year's Day game and a bit more joy. Carl United 2, Port Vale 1. This was more like it, wasn't it, Mike? This was a bit more like the Carl United we remember from last season. A bit of fight and spirit there, wasn't there?
Yeah, exactly, and late goals as well, and the drama. But we deserved it. There's no two ways about that. And we played some really, really good football at times as well. Which sometimes it's hard to do that when you're struggling a bit. Players don't have the confidence to be stringing all these passes together and taking extra touches. But we played some really, really good stuff, and we're definitely good value for the win.
Absolutely, this one. In terms of the team selection, no surprise once again Luke Plange wasn't involved. Simmer did admit after the game pretty much that the loan deal wasn't going to be extended, or they had no intention to at that point. 3 changes from the Wigan game. Gibson, Garner and Charters came in for McCallum, Edmondson and Armour. I suppose Armour maybe was the big surprise there of the ones that were dropped from the team, possibly. Went back to the back 3 with Barkley at the right side, Mellish on the left, Vale down the middle, and Robinson got a chance to show what he can do at left wing back rather than midfield, which he's been playing recently. Manuel as well at right wing back as well, to see him playing that role. And it certainly seemed to have a good impact, didn't it, on the team? They looked a lot more familiar in that formation, didn't they, than they have done for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like Emmanuel is not a fullback. I think his positioning isn't good enough to be a fullback, but as a wing back, I think he's got the athleticism and he can get up and down, and he caused their fullback a lot of problems. But I think, for him, he's a wing back. We need to be playing him at wing back if we're going to be playing him, really.
Absolutely. I mean, first half, we dominated in terms of chances. There was a long range effort from Gibson that was tipped over and Charters shot wide. Gibson also had a chance early in the second half, a little bit of an acrobatic overhead kick effort. And then it just kind of felt there was a feeling of deja vu, wasn't there? Because switching off at a corner, sloppy defending. Jordan Gibson, to be fair in him, he had 2 or 3 men to try and pick up at once, and no one got out to support him quickly enough. They got into the box, balls played across, and Garrity pokes it home from fairly close range. There's an argument from a few I've seen online that Gabe Breeze maybe could have done a little bit better on this goal, and if it had been Thomas Holy, people might have been having a go at him.
I mean, I think the shot was probably 7 yards out. I think if strikers are taking shots from 7 yards out in the box, it's the defence you need to be looking at and not the goalkeeper.
No, I think you're right. I think that the defence was the issue. There's maybe an argument he could have done better with it, but the thing is, I think even if he gets a hand onto it, there's a chance someone's going to be there to poke into the empty net anyway from close range, because there wasn't really anywhere for him to palm it away to because of the power on it. So really frustrated at that point. You think, here we go again, basically. And they nearly made it 2-0, didn't they? And actually, this is where Breeze came into his element, didn't he? He made a good long save from a long range effort. And from the rebound, really good technique to make the save, wasn't it?
Yeah, really good double save that. But I mean, on the whole, he comes out and collects the ball quite well. Sometimes one thing that people don't see a lot from keepers is like the way they come out and claim through balls. That's something that's so easy to get wrong, and you can so easily get caught in no man's land. And he did it pretty, self-assured. His whole game was pretty good,
Yeah. There's still elements of the defence not quite trusting him yet in terms of him being an inexperienced player. There was a point where he was wanting the ball back from Emmanuel, when Emmanuel had it in a tight area at the back, and he was like, he was saying like, I want it, basically saying, here, I'll clear it. And Emmanuel kept it, and then put it out for the throw in. And Emmanuel did apologise to him and say, look, I should have played it back to you. That'll hopefully come with a few more games. If he's going to be in net for a little bit of the long term here, that'll give him a chance to maybe, show what he can do. And the players will start to trust him a little bit more. But that'll come with time. United kept plugging away. And then Maguire almost equalised. Actually, he had one that was poked just wide. And then came the penalty incident. Now, when I saw this at the time, I thought it looked very soft. I thought it was a bit theatrical. He'd gone down a bit, throwing himself down. I was like, it's a soft one, that one. Now I've seen it back from the camera angle on TV. It's a stonewall penalty. He just kicked him, basically. Yeah. He's got the ball, and he's kicked at him and not got any of it.
Yeah, I was the same. I was watching it at home when I follow, and when I saw it the first time, I didn't think much of it. But when it showed the slow-mo replay, I was like, oh, that's a penalty. And to be fair to the ref, he only gets to see it once. You and me on first view, and both didn't think there was much in it. So, yeah, we give refs a lot of stick, but I think it's hard to give them too much stick for that, because on first viewing for both of us, we didn't see it, so...
I mean, it was at close range as well, wasn't it? So he got to see it quite close up. So if he thinks it's a foul there, fair play. Jordan Gibson stepped up, very calm, sent the keeper the wrong way, puts the ball in the back of the net, and then kept pressing, pushing forward to get that winner, and left it late, but it finally came, and it was Mr. Dependable himself this season, Big John, on the end of it. Yeah. A great delivery from Robinson from the left. I should actually give a bit of credit to Dan Butterworth, actually, because we've been critical of him this season at times in the terms of the fact he's clearly a very good talent footballer when it comes to dribbling the ball, but he just doesn't know when to release it for a pass. And there's an argument, with this one, he didn't really have an option to release it anyway. And he just kept going and going and forced the defender to put it behind for a corner. Robinson steps up, great in-swinger, and Mellish does a brilliant job in terms of losing his man into the 6-yard box, and he just powers the header into the ground and into the roof of the net. Yeah. And I was right in line with it pretty much, because I'd moved down to the south end of the paddock towards the end of the game just to get a slightly different view. And you could see as soon as the ball went, you thought, this is a really good one, this one. You could see John coming charging in, plant his header into the back of the net, boom. And Brunton Park goes balmy. And then at that point, there was only one more chance for Port Vale. It was a free kick from about 20 yards, and Garrity sent him miles over the bar. And Gabe Breeze took his time over the goal kick like an experienced stopper, really, rather than a young lad. And the 3 points are picked up, and just a real positive feeling at the end. And the crowd really got behind the team as well. Another 7,000 plus crowd, really, really good to see. Considering we're down at the bottom of the league, imagine what it's going to be like when we're actually getting up towards the top. We could be getting 10
exactly
a week next season. That's the excitement. Talking points. Switching back to 3-5-2 looks so much better, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said with Wigan, I think players didn't really know where they should be. And I think with this, the players know where they should be a bit more. And I think Emmanuel, wing-back is his best position. I mean, John Mellish, I've previously sort of been in favour of 3-5-2, and I've said that's the position where you get the best of John Mellish. But I think now in a 4 at the back, you also see great performances from him. So, and Sam Lavelle, to be fair, they've both played very well in a 4 at the back, but I think they're both also capable of playing in a 3 at the back. Controversial opinion, I think that Robinson could be a better wing back than Armour.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I've always said that Armour has been a fullback playing at wing back, and Armour is a very good fullback, and he's not a bad wing back. He'll churn out 7 out of 10 every week, but I just feel Robinson just offers that little bit more in the final third, and you want him on the pitch for them corners.
I think with Robinson, there's elements of Danny Granger about the way he plays, in terms of the way he plays the ball, and the way he puts his crosses in. Yeah, I think Armour will bring you a lot more defensively, and I think you'd feel a lot strong with him in there. I think there'll be times when you'll want one or the other, but it's good to have some healthy competition in that position as much as anything. And the thing with Armour is people forget Armour has played he played something like 60, 70 games in a row, starting. So it comes to a point where he probably does need a little break out the team, and I'm sure he'll be back in at some point. But because he's a great player, and we've seen that down the years. But yeah, Robinson had another really good game, and is it basically a chance for him to pin down that role for a bit now? You reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done his bit to certainly stay in the team for next week. Like I say, I think you want him on the pitch just for them set pieces. It doesn't matter where you play him; you want him somewhere on that pitch. Fantastic. And go on.
I think the thing that stood out from this with playing the 3-5-2 is that you had a lot of round pegs in round holes, didn't you? Basically, instead of square pegs in round holes that we've had this season. Because, Barkley looks much better on the right side of a back three than he does at right back. He looks much more comfortable there. Mellish, like you said, looks comfortable in both the roles, but you're getting so much more out of him going forward when you're playing that 3-5-2.
Well, we saw him doing it, when we were chasing that equaliser, and indeed when we were chasing the winner, we saw him do his overlap a few times and causing them a lot of problems. And that's what you want. I feel like 3-5-2, it's more versatile in terms of what's going on in the game. It can be a back five when you need to sit tight, but it can be also Mellish bombing forwards when you need to get a goal.
Yeah, he's been so dependable this season, hasn't he? I think there's a strong argument for him being our player of the season so far, Mellish.
Yeah, I think so.
Him and Gibson, maybe Lavelle as well, are the three contenders, I would say.
I think Gap
speaking
would
of
have been
Gibson,
if he didn't get injured.
Oh, 100%, definitely. Speaking of Gibson, obviously interesting comments from Simo after the game. He clearly frustrated with him because he recognises what a talent he is and he wants to get the best of him. He wants him to be performing every single game, which that's probably why he's playing at our level, because he's not consistent enough.
Yeah.
If he was more consistent, he'd be playing at championship level because he's got the ability. But another good game for him. And I think playing the 3-5-2 with him in the centre, those three centre midfielders, it also gives you that flexibility. If we do want to switch to 4-3-3, we can push Mellish into midfield and we can push Gibson to one of the wings. If you have a striker who can play as a winger, like a Maguire or like as we had Patrick last season, that gives you the options to do that. And actually, I think getting back to that flexibility will actually really help us in some games and being able to do it without having to make subs with any luck. So
definitely.
But yeah, Gibson, good to see him getting back a little bit back to form as well, really, because he's maybe dropped off a little bit over the last month, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like he was maybe given a little bit of freedom in that role. I think, because I've said I think Moxon was the deepest midfielder. I think Charters was the one kind of doing a bit of everything, and I feel like Gibson, because he was sort of drifting onto both flanks a bit, and just he had that little bit of creative freedom that you like to see him with, and he was a little bit frustrating because there was some times when he maybe gave the ball away sloppily, and he didn't seem desperate to win it back sometimes, but then 5 seconds later he'd just create a moment of magic out of nothing like he does, and that's him. And like you said before, if he was consistent in what he does, he wouldn't be playing for Carlisle, would he? So you've just kind of got to accept it, I suppose.
Yeah, and work on it and try and improve that, and which is obviously what Simon wants to do. Before we wrap up this bit, got to give a mention to Gabe Breeze. Obviously made his Brunton Park debut in this game, and he's now three appearances into his Carl United career. He's obviously not been able to keep a clean sheet so far, which is not his fault, we should say. How do you mentioned it before? Do you think he's done quite well? Do you think he's his role to lose at the moment? I mean, I imagine Simo want to bring a goalkeeper in, but he doesn't seem in that much of a rush because he looks like he's going to be playing on Saturday at Exeter.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd like to see us get another keeper in, and I'd like to see Breeze loaned out to, I'd say, National League at the lowest, and I want him playing 15, 20 games between now and the end of the season, because I think that would be better for him than sitting on our bench. But yeah, he's certainly, taken to it like a duck to water, and that's really good to see. Another Cumbrian lad in the team.
I do wonder if it's been a good test for Simo as well to look and think, right, he's actually maybe worth another deal at the end of the season, because obviously his contract's up in the summer. You might look and think, right, okay, he showed actually he's quite capable and he's got a bit of confidence about him, and he technically looks pretty good. We can take a bit more time to develop him now. In the same way, with Gillespie, we sent him out on loan to Blythe and he's good enough, let's tie him down for longer. With Gabe, he's had to do it even harder way by coming into the first team and a struggle inside and try and help us get points. So it's a good learning curve for him either way. And Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I feel like goalkeeper's a bit different as well. I feel like a lot of young lads,
Yeah.
if they're not around the first team by the age of 20, they often get binned off. But goalkeepers often have longer careers, don't they? So you can afford them a little bit more time when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you're right on that one. Overall assessment of the Christmas fixtures, Mike. Yeah, it didn't start particularly well. Slight improvement, and then ended on a positive, really, with a good performance. And the first win since the Burton game back in October. First win under the Piatics as well, under their era. Got to really look at that and think, great, this is the New Year's resolution, fresh start, new players coming in, big opportunities coming up in the next month.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a point on Saturday where I think we were about 7 points away from safety. And to sort of turn that round, actually now we're only 3 points away from safety. Exeter, a very winnable game. And if we go there and we get a win or even a draw, it's 2 games unbeaten and we can hopefully just go on a little bit of a run.
Yeah, that's the hope, isn't it? We're not going to go through the League Two results because there's too many to fit it. League One results. I just relegated us there. League One results for the 2 Christmas fixtures because it would just take up too much time. So we're going to take a short break now. After the break, for part 2, we'll be back and we'll be speaking to Sam Parks, who's an Exeter City fan. He doesn't have his own podcast, but he's involved with the official Exeter City podcast and also does a bit of stuff in terms of commentary for them on there, like equivalent of the iPhone and stuff like that. Really good chat with Sam, really interesting guy. So we'll be back just after the break to speak to him.
This is John Mellish. You listen to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, we're into part 2 now, and it's time for Behind Enemy Lines, where we'll be speaking to an Exeter City fan ahead of this weekend's big, I think it's fair to say, game at St James's Park. And I've got Sam Parrs with me. Sam, welcome to the show. And just tell us a bit about yourself, because you do a bit of work for the official Exeter podcast. You do a bit of commentary as well, don't you?
Yeah, a pleasure to have me on, Lee. Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Yeah, so I go to Exeter Uni. So I've kind of adopted the club through there and big fan through there now. So I commentate for the uni on quite a lot of home games. And then I also do bits for the club's podcast as well through, relationships that we've kind of gained through the media team, which is quite fun, and obviously attend home and away games as well, which is quite nice. So a bit of everything, really.
It's funny you mentioned about being a student at the uni and doing stuff there, because when me and my mate went down, Mike, I do the podcast with, we went down to the game against you guys a couple of seasons ago. There was a large group of students stood in the away end in front of us. And it seems like they go in the away end every a game and adopt the away team. And they had Cal United crest printed on paper, stuck on their t-shirts and stuff, and they were trying to start random chants there. It was a bizarre but amusing experience that was a highlight of a pretty dreadful day of football for us that day.
Yeah, students, they get up to everything. I've seen it all down there, so it doesn't shock me. But we got a big following of students as well at the club, which is quite nice. And
Right, let's go back to August. You guys got a 2-0 win at Brunton Park, and 2 games later, you were top of the division. Yet here we are 4 months on, and you've dropped into the bottom 4. What has gone wrong in that time?
Look, it's, there's quite a lot of factors. I think obviously luck plays into it a bit. We know League One, as soon as you get hit by a few injuries, it kind of goes downhill. Our best player's out injured. Dimitri Mitchell doing his ACL. Ultimately, our best player, unfortunately. The likes of Sam Nombe leaving to Rotherham as well, our 2 best players on the move. And then, other injuries along the way haven't helped. But, it's just been very, very poor, really. Mistakes, I think, quite a lot. I guess we'll go on to talk about recent form, but happen again at the weekend. A good performance ruined by silly mistakes. So, it's one where you kind of look at yourself, and I think everyone at the club's looked at themselves and gone, where do we go from here? And it's a really, really tough one.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious question is about the manager, Gary Caldwell. I mean, he's done a pretty steady job, actually, since he came into the club to replace Matt Taylor. And yet, surely he must be under threat at the moment in terms of, the run of form that the club's on and having dropped down the table.
Yeah, I think, it was a really, really tough one. Fans were calling for his head about 8 weeks or so ago, quite a long time ago, losses to Fleetwood and teams like that back 8 weeks ago or so, people were calling for his head. And it's kind of reached that point where we're now in December and January. His plans are going to be in for the January transfer window, which is the problem. It's kind of hard to sack a manager when all the plans are in place and they're already moving to sign players, which is kind of the debacle we've been in. If we sacked him 8 weeks ago, you could have got a manager in who would set their own plans in for January. But the thing is, at the moment, we've got to stick with him because it's going to be his January plans that are going to be executed on the club.
Yeah, I'm looking here at the recent fixtures you've had, and I think it was I'm trying to look here. Is it a 0-0 draw against Portsmouth? That's not a bad result, really. To be fair, is it? And I know Wickham have dropped down the table a little bit, but that's not too bad. 1-0 win against them and a 1-1 draw against Stevenage. You're getting some results against some of the decent teams, but then when it comes to some of the struggling teams, I mean, Port Vale, when we played them the weekend, they weren't great at all, and Cambridge obviously dropped down a bit, and obviously Reading, right down there this season, you've not been able to get results. Is it just a case of that they're just not turning up against the small, the smallest, probably wrong with the struggling teams this season?
Yeah, look, I think you can attribute it to two things. As an Exeter City fan at the moment, we don't have an out-and-out striker, unfortunately, that won't score goals. Nombo left in the summer, so we haven't got a true number 10 or a number 9 up there. We've had to recall a youngster in on loan, Sonny Cox, who's a good player, but at the end of the day, he's not a proven League One striker at all.
Yeah.
So it's been goals at that end of the field that's been struggling. And, you combine that with some mistakes at the back that if you had a striker, you could get away with a little bit. But, no goals up front means that mistake at the back. We had a few against Reading. The Port Vale game was down to a few mistakes. And that just means that you start to lose those games that otherwise you could scrape a result or draw in, which is, really frustrating.
It's interesting, though. Everything you're saying there, I think there'll be Carlisle fans listening to what you've said there about small mistakes, not able to score at the other end, nodding along going, yep, that sounds very, very familiar. And it's very easy to get into that cycle and drop yourself down towards the bottom. One thing that's always stood out whenever we've played against Exeter over the years is they've always had that quite sort of steady core of players in the squad. It doesn't, maybe I'm just looking at it wrong here. I'm looking at the squad now. It seems like there's been a bit more disruption to that in recent seasons, that it's not, that steady core seems to have almost dropped away, and you bring a lot more extra sort of players in almost. Is that the case? Has been a notable change in that area?
Yeah, I think there has. We're a club that we pride ourselves on our academy. We've had brilliant players come through, the likes of Ollie Watkins, Ethan Ampadu have all come through our academy and gone on to bigger things. But, Matt Taylor left halfway through last season, and it's kind of been, Gary said openly he doesn't mind not having a team full of academy players, which have, kind of seen that core drop away. We had Josh Key leave in the summer, Archie Collins, all academy lads, Jack Sparks, who's at Pompey now and playing good football. So, there's still a few players in there, the likes of Piers Sweeney, Alex Hartridge, Harry Kite, but even then, a few of them are rumoured to leave, and it's not the same Exeter City team that you would have looked at, 12, 18 months ago and gone, yeah, this is, an Exeter City type squad.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned the academy there, because it is something that Exeter have got a fantastic reputation for, as you say, Watkins and Ampadu and players like that. Who've gone on to do some fantastic things, and the club obviously invested heavily in their academy and training centre, didn't they? I think in recent seasons with the money they got from Watkins, and that's something that we're looking to do as a club here at Carlisle. How are the current crop of youngsters doing there? Because like you say, it doesn't seem to be too many coming through. You seem to send a lot out on loan to like I think Tiverton and clubs like that, but it doesn't seem like they're pushing on this at the moment.
No, we've reached kind of a rough patch. The recent batch have gone off. They're either in the team at the moment or they've just left in the summer for decent money and reparation fees, which is quite nice. But it's that kind of gap. We've got 2 to 3 years where we're waiting on some players to come through. We've got a few 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds who make the bench, play the Papa John's trophy or whatever it's called now. Bristol Street Motors, that's what it's called.
That's the one, yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, they play in those games, but apart from that, unfortunately, they're not going to get a look in a relegation scrap. So it is loan spells for them. But there's a few that could be pushing on the door, but nothing like the old crop that we've had of recent years.
So, as you mentioned there before, Sam Nombe, huge loss in August, to lose a player of his quality. big impact that's had, but also is that sort of the player that you reckon Gary Caldwell will be looking to? And it's difficult to replace a player like that, isn't it? But get a similar sort of player in to take on his role.
Yeah, like going into this transfer window, I think all Exeter fans know we just need strikers. 2 strikers who can score goals. Nombe scored us 15 goals in League One last season. He scores goals. That's just what he did. And obviously we had a really good season last year in League One, partly because of his goals. So to lose him, really, really annoying. But there's money in the bank from that transfer fee. £1 million striker. There's money there to look for a replacement, and hopefully they can find a replacement that can just hit the ground running, because that's what we need at the moment.
Yeah, similar in the way that we had to bring Luke Armstrong in January. We've needed a player like that for a while. Yeah, in terms of other players in the squad, I mean, Dimitri Mitchell, he's someone who's impressed quite a bit for you guys, and certainly made an impact at Brunton Park earlier in the season when he should have been sent off. I think everyone is in agreement on that one. But he's out with an ACL injury. I think he picked up. That must be another big blow as well.
Yeah, ACL, and his contract's out in the summer, so we don't know if we'll see him again, unfortunately. Big loss. A really dynamic player. He looked really good when he came in January for us last year, and he really kicked on this season. Got some big goals, a winner against Luton in the Cup, obviously scoring at Brunton Park as well. He scored a few others in the league. Just an all-round quality player. He could go up another league, but a massive loss for us at the moment, I think.
Who are the danger men in the squad that we need to watch out for then for this game?
Danger men in the squad? I'll give you a few. Dion Rankin on the right wing, on loan from Chelsea. Scored his first league goal against Reading at the weekend. He's just come on leaps and bounds recently. I think a lot of the recent form you can kind of put to him. Got a really nice assist at Stevenage as well. Just looked much better. Really impressed with him. I think the likes of Sonny Cox, a youngster coming through, who's our striker at the moment, scored the winner against Wickham. The fans really big fan of him. May not start, but he's definitely one to look out for. And then I'm going to say Luke Harris, who we signed today on loan from Fulham. Should have come in the summer. Really, really good player. And I know a lot of fans were excited to see him in the summer, but to see him now, really interesting.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. I think there's not much else to ask really in terms of rest of the season. I suppose the aim is just simply to get yourselves away from trouble, and it is going to be a bit of a fight at the moment, isn't it? Because you look at it, and I don't think there's a huge amount to pick between maybe the bottom 8 in the division, is there?
No, I think it's all open, which is really nervy for Exeter City fans and probably Carlisle fans as well. We're kind of in the same park where goals aren't coming, easily. I know you lot have signed Luke Armstrong, which might help out in that category, but it's mistakes and goals, and that's massive in a League One dogfight. And there's 5 or 6 teams that don't look that great down there. Reading, Cambridge could get dragged back in. I still wouldn't rule Wickham out of it yet already. It's really open at the bottom, and there's no team set adrift yet, which is really interesting and very nerving for Exeter City, to be honest.
Sam, you've been very generous for your time. Thank you very much. Before you go, I'll ask you for a prediction for this weekend's game.
I'm going to say Exeter win at 1-0.
Yeah, well, to be fair, you're not the only person to have said that this season on the predictions here, so it's not a massive surprise. Thanks for your time again, and all the best for the rest of the season after this weekend, as long as it's not at the expense of Carlisle staying up.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you very much. All the best too.
Hi, it's Tom Piatic II, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, we're back into part 3 of the Brunton Bugle. Thanks once again to Sam Parks, the Exeter City fan, for giving up his time to speak to us ahead of this weekend's massive game. I think it's fair to say, Mike. Can you start throwing around the phrase 6-pointer in January?
Yeah, I've always been a firm believer. Teams look at results at the end of the season and they'll say, "Oh, if only we'd won that last game of the season." But every game matters just as much as the last game of the season, And I don't want to look back at the end of the season and think, "Oh, if only we'd got better against Exeter," because we've already lost them once. So if they're to sort of take 6 points off us, that's this season, that'd be devastating.
Yeah, it'd be pretty frustrating, wouldn't it, to follow up it? Because that's been our problem this season, isn't it? Following up a good performance with another good performance. It's generally been followed with a stinker usually, hasn't it? Or, one of those games where we've just frustrated ourselves and not quite been good enough. Just before we get into it, though, just to mention there, obviously you heard a little bit of the little sting that we play in the breaks there with Tom Piatic II. You're going to hear a bit more from him though next week, aren't you? Because Dan and I, hopefully, we've got it pinned down. We're going to be speaking to Tom Piatic II, and we'll have a special episode for you. We'll have a chat with him about the takeover, get a little bit more background on his life as well, and what's planned for United in the next coming years, really. So very excited, looking forward to that one. Thanks once again to Tom for agreeing to do that with us, because we know he listens to the pod. So it'll be good to have him on at some point next week, and we'll let you know when that's coming out. Just follow all our social channels. And if you subscribe to the podcast, of course, if you go to whatever podcast app you use, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, anything like that, click subscribe, and every time a new episode comes out, you'll get a little notification. You can download it and listen to it at your pleasure. There's loads of old episodes you can go listen to on there. Really, really happy in terms of the listener figures, actually, I have to say now. They've gone through the roof over the last couple of years. It's been really, really fantastic. So thanks, everyone, for listening. And thanks to everyone who comes up to both me and Mike when we're at games, don't they? And says hello and says, are you so-and-so from the... They recognise our voice before they say... I think sometimes people hear the voice and turn around like, are you so-and-so from the... Yes, I am so-and-so from the... Nothing will be... Slice from Twitter. I'm sure he'll enjoy having his name read out here. When me and you were in Wigan, so when we go to home games, I get the train from Liverpool to Wigan. You get the train from Southport to Wigan, but you come into Wigan Wargate, and I come into Wigan Northwestern. So we go out to there's a little. We tell a little story, but we're going to the Morrison's local shop there and get some water or some drinks and some scran for the train up. And we were just stood outside there, and a fella just taps us on the shoulders, and he goes. And he takes his headphone and goes, "You're not going to believe this. I've just heard your voice in here, and you're stood here with me." And it was Slice from Twitter. He wasn't able to get to the game that day. He was working, but he said, "I'm just listening to you while I'm out on my round. This is mad." I was like, "It really is a small world, isn't it? When something like that happens, it's absolutely balmy." But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We really appreciate it, and we've got lots more to come over the next coming months. Right, let's look ahead to the Exeter game then, Mike. Interesting one, Exeter, aren't they? Because when they beat us back in August with that criminal 2-0 win, where they should have been down to 10 men, with X's Dimitri Mitchell, the winner of the Baby Boy Byfield 2003. Big shout out to Joe Stevenson there, Carl United fan, who does that mental award each year. Should have been sent off in that game. 2 games later, 8 games in, they're top of the league. Fast forward to now, nearly 20 games later, they're fourth bottom. It's crazy. It shows how it can really turn around quite quickly in the league, doesn't it? In terms of, you can go to a good start, but if you don't keep it up, you can find yourself dropping down the table. Are you quite surprised that they've dropped down so far?
I did think at the start of the season it was a bit of a false position. It's funny, we've played a few teams at the start of the season. Port Vale were another one, and they were absolutely flying when we played them, and they're not flying anymore. And Stevenage, and when we played Stevenage, I thought, they won't last up there either. Stevenage pretty much have. They've gone off a little bit, but they're still, they're still in the top 7 now. Exeter and Port Vale have both sort of stumbled down the league, but it's one of them. There is some very big fish in this league, isn't there? And absolutely zero disrespect to Exeter. I've got a lot of time for them as a football club. There's a lot of football clubs I hate, and Exeter aren't one of them. But it is a tough league, and there's a lot of big fish. And Exeter, sadly, it is hard to compete with the Boltons, the Portsmouths, and the Peterboroughs et al. Of this league.
And they're a club we'll touch on in a minute who rely heavily on young players coming through youth academy products to get themselves up there, don't they? And if that drops off, you suddenly find yourselves in a bit of trouble, don't you? When you have to bring in players and you have to almost ruin the balance of your squad in that sense. Here's a stat for you. They've only had 1 win since September. That was the 1-0 victory 3 games ago against Wycombe Wanderers. They've picked up just 7 points from the last 48 available. I mean, that's pretty telling, that, isn't it? You'd imagine Gary Caldwell must be under threat of it. I mean, if we lose this game, start of the transfer window, surely they're starting to think maybe we'll have to get rid of him now, because if we delay it any longer and things still bad, well, you're gonna have to get rid of someone before the window shuts, and you don't give them very much time to find new players, do you? You know, that's something that fell into our laps almost a couple of years ago with Simo. We got very lucky in terms of incoming, but that could have been a disaster, couldn't it? So, do you reckon he must be under threat, surely?
Yeah, but at the same time, Exeter aren't a club that sack managers as willy-nilly as other clubs, are they?
No, they're not.
So, yeah, I mean, naturally, if you're under a run like that, yeah, you are going to be under threat. But as to whether or not they get rid of him or they want him to see it out is another matter.
I mean, losing Sam Nombe last August is a big blow for them, wasn't it? You know, he scored so many goals for them and such a big player. Get £1.1 million for him, it's great, and they can probably spend a bit of that in this January transfer window. But it's difficult to replace a player of that quality, isn't it? No matter how much money you've got when you're a club the size of Exeter.
Yeah, exactly. And they lost Jamal Blackman as well, the keeper, who had been, I think, he'd been their number one for a good few years, I think. You know, we've seen ourselves, you know, replacing a keeper, it's probably the hardest position on the pitch to replace, really. And they lost Jack Sparks to Portsmouth as well, and all of a sudden, that's a bit of a span of your team that's just gone. And yeah, it's not been easy for them to build it back up again.
Well, yeah, this is the point I made in the chat with Sam, that when you look at the squad in previous years, before I put together these previews and I put together what the squad is, you'd probably be able to in your head remember. I can remember about 7 or 8 Exeter players. And you recognise the names straight away. I don't get that now. I mean, I'm looking through the squad. I mean, looking at the midfield, I think a push. I mean, I recognise Tom Carroll because he was a big player, a bigger club, but not really in terms of long-term extent. Maybe Kyle Taylor? Maybe is the only one I think there. Maybe. I mean, even in attack, I mean, I don't really recognise any of the players there in terms of long-term players. Pierce Sweeney really is the only one that stands out for me and think, oh, I remember him. And Alex Hartridge been there a while. Other than that, there's been quite a turnover, I think, in recent seasons, hasn't there? As you mentioned, they lost Blackman, Nombe, Sparks. I mean, Jake Caprice and Archie Collins were both big players. Josh Key, you know, they're the kind of players you've remembered for like 3 or 4 years there. I think it's probably starting to catch up on them a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I remember Caprice because he was the wing-back one that hadn't scored a goal like ever, and then scored against us.
Yeah, I remember now. That was
when,
the day we had...
you and me went down when Keith Millen was manager.
And there was the animal poo on the back step of the terrace. We had to put a cardboard cup over it to make sure neither of us stood on it during the game.
At least we hope it was an animal.
If it wasn't, then it was a very, very small human poo. Let's just put it that way. That's enough talk about that. I don't want to talk about animals and things like that. I'll leave that for the little extra afterwards. There's a little story I'll tell as to why we have to record a little bit late today. Summer signings. What did you make of the players they brought in? I mean, they normally don't bring that many. They normally have just a little bit of experience to go with the youth, don't they? And they've obviously had to make a lot more signings this season. I mean, I'm looking at it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 signings. Not really like them, is it, to be fair? It's quite a big turnover. Who stands out there for you?
Well, I think Jack Aitchison, had he not been on loan there or something?
I think so. He was at Forest Green, wasn't he, a couple of years ago? I remember that. I think he was at Barnsley on loan from Forest Green.
Forest Green, I think I remember him from,
Yeah.
I thought he was a pretty handy player when he's played against us in the past. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there's a few who because the players they've lost have ultimately gone on to better clubs. Yeah. Josh Key went to Swansea, Archie Collins, Peterborough. Giovanni Brown's a bit of a controversial one, isn't it? But they just wanted rid of him. Jack Sparks touched on Jamal Blackman and Sam Nombe, but they've all sort of gone on to better things, and a lot of the replacements have been kind of punts from non-league, which sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but you're requiring most of them to work, really, and they're not all going to work, are they? So
No, I think
yeah. I think they only took on I think 4 loanees, which they always seem to be a team that takes on the maximum 5, from what I seem to recall.
Yeah.
But yeah, they like you say, they don't have. You used to be able to name a good few players from their lineup, and that kind of spine is gone. And I think that's why they're struggling. Really, 15 players in, they're all going to take a bit of time to adapt, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, Yannick Wiltshire's a name that I've heard of before as well, I suppose. There's one there. And Tom Carroll's the other one, isn't he? A technically very, very good footballer. He's been very unlucky with injuries in his career. And I think Dion Rankin seems to have done quite well there. Ryan Trevitt looked quite good, actually, in the game at Brunton Park. I was quite impressed with him. But yeah, beyond that, it's much of a muchness, really, for them, isn't it? I'm looking at the recent results as well. I mean, they seem to do all right against the better teams. They got, a 0-0 draw against Portsmouth and a 1-1 draw with Stevenage. But then they're losing to Port Vale, who we saw are not a particularly great side. They've lost 2-0 to Cambridge, who've been struggling a little bit. And, a 3-2 defeat against Reading, one of the fellow strugglers as well in the last game. And if you want to watch this back, I mean, the goal that the second goal, for Reading is an absolute shambles at the back for them. It's really not good defending at all. They failed to clear it, and it's an own goal. It's heading into the back of the net from a cross. It's not great. I think it's fair to say. I feel like it's one we really got to go for the 3 points. And really, I think we've got to sense a bit of blood here and think, right, let's use the confidence of that win against Port Vale and get them on the back foot and try and get results from this one. That's what I'm really hoping for anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, let's touch on some of the other little bits before we talk about United. Referee for this one, Carl Brook from East Sussex. It's his 4th season as an EFL referee. I think he's actually from Scotland originally. There's also something on Soccer Base about that. He's taken charge of 21 games so far this season, handing out 95 yellows and 2 red cards. I don't think the stats I've got here for last season are correct because I think I didn't update it. Sorry about that. He has only taken charge of 1 United game before. That was the trip to Swindon back in August 2021. I think Joe Riley scored a brilliant goal in that game, I seem to remember, and Tristan Abraham scored a penalty, if I remember rightly. I think, possibly. Brendan Dickinson
I can't remember.
Magnus Norman were booked that day. Head-to-head wise, we've not got a very good record against them. It's the 67th meeting of the two sides, and we've won 20, drawn 17, and we've lost 29. We've only won once against them in the last 12 games, the last 12 fixtures, and that was the 1-0 victory at Brunton Park in the 2021 season, where the fans weren't allowed to go. And I think this was like the last good win we got during the period, when we had a load of games that were called off. I think after this, we went rapidly downhill after this game. Was Lewis Alessandro scored?
I think, scored in I think it was in like the first 5 minutes. And we were all like, because we've been so long without a game, and we're all like roaring to get back, and we started so well, and then our season just fell apart.
And if I remember rightly, it was a 1:00 kickoff. Because I think they wanted to save money on the floodlights, because they thought, well, no fans are there, you might as well do it 1:00 because then watch it at home. If I remember rightly, I'm sure we got a few games like that, didn't we?
I think you might be right there, yeah.
I'm still gutted that we never had that Tuesday 1:00 kickoff against Leyton Orient that we nearly had or something at one point. Remember, we tried to do that and it got called off because of the snow or the ice, I think it was. Mm-hmm. Oh, that would have been incredible. So that's in terms of those stats. Well, let's talk about United then, Mike. It sounds like from what Simo said in the pre-match thing, there's a couple of possible injury issues. You'd imagine maybe one of them might be Taylor Charters, who did hobble off with what looked like a dead leg and maybe struggling to recover from that. Bear in mind it's a Monday to Saturday rather than a Saturday to Saturday, this one. Would you make any changes other than that, potentially?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I felt like the midfield on Saturday, Charters and Moxon, just have a little bit of an understanding together.
Yeah.
And I'd like to sort of stick with that. Wouldn't surprise me though if, I mean, it's tough, isn't it? Because who do you drop? Because if you're to play Charters and Moxon, that implies dropping Gibson. If you're to play the 3 at the back, yeah, it's tough. I mean, Simo does like to stick with the winning team, to be fair.
He does, but then he said this recently, hasn't he? That sometimes he's like, maybe I've made a mistake doing that. Tell you what I'd do. I probably would take Charles out, and that's not a reflection on his performance. I thought he was arguably, until he got injured, probably our man of the match against Port Vale. He really controlled the midfield. He some really nice touches in there, but you don't want to risk him getting a longer term injury there. If he's got a slight dead leg, don't risk it. Bring Harrison Neal in for him, and then you can push Moxon a little bit further forward. Neal can do the defensive role. Gibson in there as well. And then I'd probably switch Garner out for Luke Armstrong. I'd bring Luke Armstrong in from the start.
Yeah.
You've paid that much money for him. Back in to be fit. He starts alongside Maguire. That also gives you the option to switch to 4-3-3 if you want. You can push Mellish into midfield. The rest of the team I'd keep as it was. And then obviously on the bench, I think Whelan would probably drop out in favour of Garner dropping to the bench. And obviously Armstrong coming in. And if Neal comes in, I guess you'd have to maybe look at what you do with that in terms of Neal. You have to look at what you do in terms of Grecians coming in, which I imagine he'd probably be on the bench as well. So it's good to have options, isn't it, finally? It's been a while, so it's nice to have a few options on the bench. And we still got JJ to come back as well.
Yeah.
We completely forget about that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I'd like to see... I think that alongside Armstrong, I think Maguire would look a different player. And for me, Garner has been good with his goals this season, but purely off memory and with no stats to back me up on this, because I'm a professional and do zero research, but I think that Joe Garner's, most of his goals have come in the second half this season.
Yeah.
So bring him on in the second half and let him have fresh legs, because that seems to be when he comes alive. So let him have fresh legs in that second half, coming on off the bench and causing havoc, because he can cause plenty of havoc when he's knackered as well. So I'd love to see him with fresh legs causing havoc.
Yeah, potentially maybe I would drop Whelan out for obviously Armstrong, but Armstrong would come into the starting 11, and maybe McGeoch out for Grecian possibly for the extra defender when you're playing down somewhere like Exeter. So plenty of options, you know. It's, like I said, it's nice to have that concern rather than concern of filling the bench itself, which has been the problem for a while now. Just a little shout out, see, with the players who's still out on loan. Max Kilsby's loan's up, so it'll be interesting to see whether that gets extended to the end of the season, or maybe he gets recalled, maybe to send him out to somewhere else, possibly for the rest of the campaign. Kai Nugent is till the end of the season, so he's still fine. Jaden Harris's loan will run out in the next few weeks, I think. Scored a goal there for Eastleigh, didn't he, the other day? Nice little finish from a corner, actually. So really nice to see Jaden getting on the score sheet for
although he did a controversial retweet after the Wigan game, didn't he?
I think he's just retweeting one of his mates there. I think footballers do not look into it anywhere near as much as people think sometimes. I think it's one of those ones where we're very much in danger of, like the Gibson thing, reading a lot more into it than is actually the case. So I'm hoping that anyway, at the very least. Prediction time, Mike. I've done this wrong on the thing. I've just spotted this. I apologise. I filled it in wrong. So the last game... Someone got a full... You got a point in the game against... was it against Fleetwood? Was it? You got a point the other day?
Yeah, I predicted Moxon to score.
So you got Moxon to score. In the game against Port Vale, Dan got a full house, didn't he?
Yeah. So
what did he get right?
Well, you get 1 point... Yeah, you get 1 point for each goal scorer, 2 points for a correct score, and you get 3 bonus points if you get a full house. So Dan got, 2 points for the correct score. He got another 2 points for the 2 correct goal scorers, and then he got the 3 bonus points. So we got 7 points, which puts him clear in the lead. But it goes to show how many points you can get if you get a full house. So it could easily change this weekend.
I just got to say about that, I really hope he put some money on it, because he could have won a bit of money on that, couldn't he? If he'd gone for 2-1 and Gibson and Mellish to score. So I'm guessing, because I always forget it. I keep thinking I should do it every time just in case. But yeah, no, the fair play at Dan. He got absolutely bang on.
If I put money on all of my predictions this season, I'd have lost a hell of a lot of money. So
you'd be in a severe amount of debt, wouldn't you? Speaking of which, let's get yours out of the way.
I'm going to go for a 3-1 win. And I'm going to say Luke Armstrong will get a brace and Sam Lavelle will score the other.
Okay. I'm going to go I think Gabriel's going to keep a clean sheet. Let's be more positive. I'm going to 3-0. And I'm going to go Luke Armstrong will score on his debut. I think Sean Maguire is going to get a goal because, like I said, I think he'll benefit from having Armstrong up there with him. And Owen Moxon will get the other goal as well. So there you go. I'm going to go for Armstrong, Maguire, and Moxon in a 3-0 win. Right, let's have Dan's prediction for this one.
New year, new signings, and new positive outlook for the Blues, hopefully. I want to go for a good battle, 2-1 win. And I think we'll probably all go with Luke Armstrong to notch. And I'll go for Owen Moxon for the other one.
Oh, for God's sake. Like, he's covering me off there. It's just typical, isn't it? I've got to hope for the 3-0 and get the full house now, haven't I? Right, there you go. So that's the predictions. Right, let's wrap things up for this episode. Let's do the X-Files. Bit of a bumper one because we didn't do one in the last festive preview one. So we're going to start with the pre-Christmas games. And we're going to go to the land down under to start. And Zach Clough, he was on the score sheet for Adelaide United in a 3-1 loss against Newcastle Jets. Callum O'Hare, he's really found a bit of form since he's got back to fitness, which is really nice to see. He scored for Coventry City in their 3-0 win at Sunderland. Paddy Madden, he netted from the penalty spot in a big win for Stockport County, a 2-1 victory over Notts County in the pre-Christmas game. Stockport are running away with it, aren't they? I think pretty confident that they will be in League One next season, the way it's going.
Yeah, I hope so.
And Notts County have lost their manager, haven't they, by the looks of things? It looks like he's off to Swansea City, so they've got to find a replacement for him now. Andy Cook's finding a little bit of form again. He got 2 goals for Bradford City in their 3-1 win at Doncaster Rovers. This is a man I'm going to mention quite a bit now because he's had a very good Christmas, to say the least. Olafelo Olamola, he scored twice for Bromley in their 2-2 draw with Altrincham. And finally, Sean, this is one Dan actually missed, and I spotted it when I was looking through the things. Sean McGinty was sent off at Ayr United in their 4-4 draw at Raith Rovers just before Christmas. Do you reckon he had some big plans for Christmas Day, Sean McGinty, possibly picking up that red card in a game like that?
Tactical standing off, I think. Yeah.
Very clever lad. On to Boxing Day. I said I was going to mention him a couple of times. Olafelo Olamola, he scored for Bromley in their 3-2 win at Ebbsfleet United. Mark Beck, he was on the score sheet for Solihull Moors in their 2-0 win over Chesterfield. Big win for them, that, isn't it, really? Because Chesterfield are right up at the top of the National League. Manny Mampala, he was on the score sheet for Marine in their 1-1 draw with Warrington Rylands. On to the games after Boxing Day. Olafelo Olamola, once again, scored another goal, this time in Bromley's 5-1 win over Ebbsfleet United. You forget the fact that they switch the fixtures, don't they, every Christmas in the National League, which I quite like. I think they should do it in the Football League, that. I mean, it would be much better, much fairer as well, actually. And then James Tavernier, he scored for Rangers in their 2-1 defeat to Celtic in the Old Firm derby. Gavin Riley scored for Queen of South in their 2-1 win over Annan Athletic in the Borders derby. Mark Beck scored once again. It's a bit of a double there, isn't it? He scored for Solihull Moors in their 3-2 defeat at Chesterfield. And finally, Brad Young scored a brace for the New Saints in their 4-0 win at Connors Quay Nomads. I love that team name. It's one of my favourite team names, like Connors Quay Nomads. On to the other news. There's a few little bits here. Start with a little bit sad news, isn't it? Marske United of the Northern Premier League, same level as Workington, I believe. They've announced that they were having a few financial issues, weren't they? I think they've there's a suggestion that they maybe sort of overreached, shall we say, in recent seasons. It's reached sort of a boiling point, and they've managed to get enough money to save the club, unfortunately, not to keep them running for this season in the Northern Premier League. So they've resigned from the league, and it'll depend on what they want to do next season. They're going to work out what league they go into. But good news for them. But sadly, Jason Kennedy plays for them, so he's now without a club. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. I wonder if Danny Granger might just give him a little ring, get him over to Workington over the other side of the A66 and play a few games for him possibly there. Or I do wonder if it might be the end of his career, though, which would be really sad, really, if that's the way it ends. But, hopefully he'll get something.
There's something you missed out with Northeast coaching staff. Anthony Sweeney is now the assistant at Hartlepool.
Oh, yes, he is. It's a caretaker thing alongside Lenny Lawrence, isn't it? How old is Lenny Lawrence? I'm going to have to look that up now, because he's been announced as the caretaker of Hartlepool, and he's been around for ages. How old is he? 76 years old. Wow. that's certainly getting the year of there, isn't it? But fair play. So as you mentioned, Anthony Sweeney is one of the caretakers at Hartlepool United after John Askey's departure there. In danger of going down to the National League North, aren't they? Hartlepool.
Yeah,
real
crazy.
Mad.
I mean, it's another moment that makes you think that if Simo hadn't come back, we'd be in that situation, if not Scunthorpe's situation. So
potentially, it's terrifying, isn't it, to think about. Gethin Jones, he's been called up to the Australia squad for the Asia Cup. I think it's his first call for them as well, isn't it? So that's fantastic stuff for him. He's had a really tough couple of years, hasn't he, with what happened with his mum and stuff. So really, really nice to see that. Ethan Walker, he's joined Oldham Athletic on loan from Blackburn Rovers. Courtney Meppen-Walter has turned up at Nantwich Town. I think he was at Buxton last, I think, if I remember rightly. So he's just making his way around the sort of Cheshire non-league circuit now, isn't he? I think it's fair to say. He's a big lad these days, isn't he? He's one of those ones. Yeah. If you're a non-league striker, you wouldn't want to come up against him, would you? You'd look and think, I'm not shooting. No. You know, if you've got a bit of pace, you'd be delighted because you think I can get away from him. If you haven't, you think I'm not going to be able to shake him off all day. He's a big lad. And finally, just one that broke early today.
To be fair, when he played for us, Meppen-Walter, he was carrying a bit of timber then, and I half thought, well, if I'd just got out of prison, I'd be going a bit mad on the pizzas, the kebabs, the things that I haven't been able to have. Yeah. But he's still going for it. So fair play. I back him all the way.
Good luck, lad. Finally, a little bit of breaking news that emerged early today. Adam Murray has left his role as assistant manager at Cheltenham Town, and he's taken up the manager's job at Eastbourne Borough in the National League South. Fair play to me. Clearly wants to be a manager himself, doesn't he? But he's chopped his career path recently. I mean, I'm going to have to load this up now. It's mental, isn't it? He's just chopped from club to club to club.
Up and down like a yo-yo, hasn't he?
I'm just looking at it here. So he was manager at Mansfield Town for 2 years. Then he went to Boston United for a year. He was Barnsley caretaker a couple of times, an assistant manager there as well, I think. He then went to Besiktas to be assistant manager there. Then he was in charge of AFC Fylde recently. He left that role. He became the assistant manager at Cheltenham, and now he's the manager at Eastbourne Borough. We should say as well, Chris Beach has been appointed full-time as well as the manager of AFC Fylde, which is no massive surprise, really. So there you go. That's it then, Mike. I think that's pretty much today's episode wrapped up. I think the new systems work well. I'm going to have to listen back to it now because it's been a little bit patchy on my end, but I think it records locally, so I'm fingers crossed this has worked because we had a few issues with our previous studio, didn't we? So we thought we'll try something different.
Yeah.
I'm using a trial on this one at the moment, so if it's any good, I'll actually pay for it and we'll use it full time as the thing. But yeah, so upcoming episodes, obviously, as you mentioned, we're going to be doing a review of obviously the Exeter game and a preview of the Oxford game, which we're both going to. There will be the interview episode with Tom Piatic II as well coming up, which I'm really looking forward to. We're hoping to sort one out with Tom Senior as well at some point in the near future. But obviously, he's a busy man at the moment. You know, there's sorting a few things out, so there's no massive rush with that one. And I think because me and Dan are going to have to test out the system, see if it works for him. We're hoping as well to get a little mini, one of the bite-sized bugle ones done on Monday, possibly. So you might get a little bit of something extra as well at some point soon. But yeah, I think that's it. Nothing else to cover, Mike, I think, today?
No, I think we've covered all bases now into the new year where we can have a bit more of a consistent kind of recording schedule because it's been a bit all over the place, hasn't it?
It has as well. And I should say, anyone asking, Dan's been moving house, and that's the reason why we haven't been able to get him on too much recently. He's been quite busy with that, and the Trust AGM stuff as well took up a bit of time. So hoping Dan will be back on a bit more regularly in the near future as well. So we've got Adam as well helping us out, which has been brilliant, you know, and he's practically, you know, one part of the family now, pretty much, isn't he? He's on every other week almost. So I'm sure Adam will probably be back on next week as well. So all I've got left to say is thanks everyone for listening, and most importantly of all, up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
So for those who are still listening now that the outro is done, here's the story. So basically, I got home tonight, opened up the back door of the kitchen to let my cat in, because I've got two cats, Monty and Minnie. Minnie was already in. I was just basically waiting for Monty to come in. Went into the hall to hang up my coat, came back into the kitchen, and Monty had left, to quote the UB40 song, a rat in my kitchen. He'd literally brought in a dead rat and dropped it in the middle of the kitchen and just stared at me to say, well, what are you going to do with this? And the answer to that was to swear very loudly at him, close the inside kitchen door, and basically ignore him until he meowed a lot and took it back out. No one needed to know that story, but Regan likes us to get a little bit at the end for everyone to listen to, doesn't he, Mike? So there you go. And
No,
you've seen
but
the photo.
for anyone who wanted to know, when there's a rat in your kitchen, what are you going to do? Lee has just explained what he did in that situation. It's not one size fits all. Different people, different cats, different rats.
Yeah.
You might do different things, but that's just how Lee did it. So there you go.
Just ignore the little and wait for him to take it back out again. That's the answer. There you go. We'll be back soon. Thank you for listening once again.